Hey everyone, Alan Schimmel, DevOps.com, DevOps TV here at IBM's InterConnect 2017 from the show floor at Mandalay Bay Convention Center. Our guest for this session is Naran Patel. Hope I didn't mess that up too bad, Naran.
No, that's great.
Close? Okay. From Cisco. Naran is actually presenting as part of a panel tomorrow on Urban Code. It's entitled DevOps, You've Got This. And Naran and his team at Cisco have actually been Urban Code customers now and doing the DevOps thing for a few years. And as we were talking off camera, it's helped them solve some problems, but there's, as always, nothing ever stays the same. There's new problems that come.
There's always problems.
There's always a new problem, it seems, but that's job security, we call that.
Yeah, and, always.
Naran, why don't you share with our audience a little bit about, first of all, what were some of the problems you were looking to solve?
So one of several things. I mean, I think teams were challenged with trying to be more agile, develop faster, be able to test more quickly, be able to integrate more quickly, build. I mean, all these traditional challenges were there, and the tool chains weren't quite connected. They couldn't move fast enough because the concept of pipelines wasn't really ingrained in the way they were developing and doing things. So a lot of the sort of heavy lifting we did was a journey of sort of three characteristics. One was figure out the technology, connect it together, get people who are doing source control to get their systems connected to the build systems like Jenkins. When you build that stuff that you're building for whatever application or set of applications, get that packaged up, put it into some sort of package management Artifactory system. Mm-hmm. And then that flows into a deployment pipeline. And then that's got release management behind it, which is sort of controlling what goes into production. So it was really sort of figuring out the fundamentals. What is the fundamentals from the beginning of the developer experience? As it steps through that, how do we get to production without making business upset by what we're trying to throw into production isn't kind of good quality, got good security, we're kind of doing the right things via risk and SOX and all those good things. So it was laying down that foundation.
Right.
And that was kind of the challenge a couple of years ago. Right. And it took us a little while to get there. And then you've got a huge portfolio. We had like 2,000 to 3,000 applications, about 6,000 to 7,000 components, software components that link up to those applications. And you have to deploy and orchestrate those continuously. And we were lucky. Our vision had a lot of lines of business supportive of our efforts. We had to get C-level conversations to happen. We had to get training and adoption and advocacy of how to use these new tools and technologies. And so it was kind of a large effort. It was a multi-pronged effort. The people, the process, the technology. I was working in the technology side, but I was touching base with the people side of things, the process, the business process, the development process type of things, the platform processes, and trying to automate the nuances behind that. Mm-hmm. And so that was the big challenge, and that was huge for us. And I think some of the things that we were uniquely doing that, even when I come here and I talk to other customers of Urban Code, that they still haven't quite got there yet, and even IBM to a certain extent hasn't got there yet, is the sort of self-service mechanism. We wanted to provide a self-service mechanism so that developers could order their runtime, their dev stacks, their development pipelines.
It's ambitious.
So that, it's all connected and they can just start coding and it's throwing it out there and it's passing through this pipeline, not quite getting to production and throwing it in there without going through the checks and balances, but it's able to get them quickly developing that feedback loop to their stakeholders and getting that product kind of shaped up.
And how, so where are you with that?
That's been going on for a couple of years. It took us 2 years to kind of get it set up, get it piloted, get a lot of feedback, make all the adjustments we needed, then get the portfolio into it and get all of those conversions. And so developers are now developing using that experience. I think as part of that early learning was, it's going to take a long time to set up all these tools, and it's a huge team to do that. Well, we don't want to do that. We're going to be smart about it. We're going to provide a self-service on top of it so the teams can enable themselves.
So you work at Cisco.
Yeah.
World unto itself, right? I mean,
That's right.
It's kind of a unique organization.
Everybody's an expert, right?
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Yeah.
How do you? So I look at it as a scientist almost, right?
Okay.
How do I take what you're doing at Cisco, which is successful,
Mm-hmm.
and how do we apply that to the banking company or the healthcare company or manufacturing?
It's a good question. I think there are fundamentals from a development standpoint that you can replicate,
Yep.
but every line of business has its own set of challenges in terms of the governance controls. And I think it's really understanding what those are and then allowing your self-service or your modeling to kind of describe those patterns. So, okay, the four core fundamentals you can reuse,
Sure.
but what are the sort of things and knobs and levers that are different for
The
those
bank.
the banking industry
Yeah.
that have certain financial compliances that they have to be compliant to, or have some sort of audit or governance control, or some regulatory controls around. And then you've got the health industry, and you've got HIPAA, and you've got other types of controls, and you've got guys who are like maybe e-commerce and selling things out there. They've got throwing up businesses, and they want to kind of do credit card processing. So you gotta think about, so what are my PCI DSS controls I have to be worried about,
Yep.
right? Otherwise, I'm in trouble with getting fined from credit card organizations. So it's really sort of a governance challenge, and you kind of have to understand which all those lines of businesses are kind of concerned with, and then make it so that all of those are patent, so that when I'm saying I'm developing this kind of application, I'm able to bring that in. I'm able to bring that governance control in and still let them go fast, but with those checks and balances already in place in the pipeline.
Got it. Now, by the same token, Cisco is also a developer heavy or tech heavy
Yep.
organization, maybe compared to the average organization.
Remember I said, hey, everybody's an expert, right?
Yeah. Well, they are. Everyone is an expert at Cisco. But in addition to being able to take lessons learned there and apply it to organizations that don't have that, you also have a unique set of challenges that other organizations are not going to have.
Right.
And that is a real issue, right, that you probably deal with day to day.
Yeah, I think, we're transforming, looking at different lines of business to increase and grow Cisco as a business. We're thinking of, how do we enable startup teams to become more powerful, to be able to turn around and change and evolve their products they're building. When we make an acquisition, we're thinking about, well, we don't want to disrupt that the secret sauce that they have,
eggs in the omelet to make the omelet.
but at the same time, we want them to scale, and we want to support them.
Yep.
And maybe if they want to do this kind of development, maybe they can use the pipeline, but we want to be fast for them.
Right.
But as soon as they reach a certain level of financial risk, maybe we want to introduce a few more checks and balances. Like I said, those governance controls may start to kick in, because you know what? Finance are going to say, hey, by the way, when you reach 300,
It's
SOX
material.
kicks in.
Right.
And we as a financial body are, organizationally responsible, accountable for making those things are there, right? But when
Agreed.
you're incubating, maybe let them go fast. Once you've got users and you've got people and services accountability there, then you kind of introduce these governance controls. And it's that right sizing, that balance you have to create. It's really important.
So my mind is racing because I'm thinking back to my incubator days, right?
Right.
And it was funny. I started a security company. We were in the Mobius Venture Capital Incubator. And it was very interesting. We wrote it was sort of a snort-based intrusion prevention
I heard of
tool.
it. Yeah.
But
And
it
it's
was-
still widely used today as a
Absolutely.
foundation for security, right?
But we took the open source snort
Right.
and we wrote some Perl and PHP scripts.
Yeah.
But that doesn't scale, right? And
right.
you're not going to have
What's the
that.
product there, and how do you maintain it, right?
And that's part of, when you're doing a lot of acquisitions, right? The due diligence sometimes doesn't uncover that maybe the code's not scalable and it's not up to snuff, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's almost better to throw it out and start over than it is to try to fix the unfixable.
One of the things that we've done more recently, just to specifically kind of think about that a little bit, is we're kind of looking into like performance, but
Yeah.
that seems a little after the fact, right? I mean, it's great. You kind of need to make sure your product's scaling and maybe you're getting more hits, and let's take care of that. And we're measuring it and monitoring, getting that feedback and improving it, right? But let's say I'm concerned about my code. Is it going to scale? I'm looking at the cyclomatic complexity. You know, I've got Sonar Cube in there. I've got what we call CD analytics, which is something that I think IBM's kind of working on, which is called IBM Insights or something around the Urban Code Suite. I think both of these kind of very similar in their purpose, in the sense that we want to understand what's happening in the code. We want to understand what's happening in the development process. So we're kind of getting our fingers in the pipelines into all these productivity pipelines and getting those insights and then providing it back to those teams, providing it back to service teams and leaders to see how well they're doing. You know, we've got all this work to do. You know, they've got these stories and they're breaking them down and they're working on them and they're delivering them. We can actually start measuring those things. You actually capture that information, say, how well are you doing? Actually, by the way, your code's not that great. Maybe your analytics telling you something here. Maybe you need to listen.
Be careful telling people that, though. Yeah,
but
telling them the baby's ugly.
Well, yeah. That's the other thing was interesting enough. You bring that up is a challenge. You know, how much truth do you tell somebody, right? And how much do you put it in a sort of nice package that says, you know, maybe you need to look at this and put a you know a red and an amber and a green to it, you know, and things like that, right?
So I helped start a company that was a roll-up in web hosting and infrastructure. And I used to have to do some due diligence. So they sent me out to a data center. A company, it was a web hosting company who had their own data center. I now use that term loosely.
Well, that was the model then, right?
Yeah, and I had to go check out their data center. And I had to tell the two founders, you know, it's very interesting. I've never seen a data center with shag carpeting before.
Nobody has one.
No, and I'm throwing off static electricity thinking I'm going to bring this up. So I made little notes. First thing we do is migrate all the servers out of their data center.
Right.
But you got to be, sometimes diplomacy is the better solution.
Yeah, I've had my feet stuck on the sticky mats when you walk
remember
in.
Those?
It's like, they're so annoying, but, you know, sorry, you got to do it.
You got to do what you got to do. Anyway, listen, thanks for being our guest here on DevOps TV today, and thank you for presenting at InterConnect this year.
No problem.
We'd love to hear more,
and
as we continue to see, you know, the journey.
Yep.
And of course, Snort is part of SourceFire, which is now part of Cisco Security.
Sure.
Right?
Well, there's more to come. I have a talk on release digitization, so that's going to be interesting. Separate talk. So I'm actually in 2 talks, but that's
very cool, man.
All right.
Maybe you can write for us on DevOps.com one day and let us know what you're doing over there.
Sure. I'll think about that. Take care.
This is Alan Schimmel for DevOps.com and DevOps TV at InterConnect 2017.
Bye.